And we are up. This is the Our Town Podcast, episode number 32.
All right.
And as you're about to see, made a couple modifications to the studio since last time. I was talking to Megan Nivens Tannett in episode 31, and we were talking about Agile and Scrum in a way as a type of development, that software development that has cascaded right into other industries. And I was commenting on how every episode something will be different, right? I'm always have this end game or this pursuit of things that I would like to do, but it's incremental. So this was the increment this week. In a minute, I'm gonna introduce to you my guest, and you'll see some of the improvements that have been made. But last time I went over the episode list, so please go back to episode 31 if you want to see some of the upcoming episodes. I won't repeat that because nothing has really changed there, other than I did add Rachel Sullivan. She will be on November 15th. Or it doesn't really matter by date, but she is scheduled. There were 4 guests I didn't have actually scheduled, and she is scheduled now. But please just like, subscribe, just do all that stuff to help continue to spread the word. Every time you like or subscribe, that just increases the chances that the algorithm will reach other people that might find this an interesting podcast, and just spread the word, and certainly appreciate your viewership. And with that, we're ready to start episode 32 and introduce to you our guest this week, who is Eric Gonzalez Tablada.
There you go. You said it right, too.
I got it right?
Yeah, you did.
I'm sure people butcher not the Gonzalez part as much, right?
It's the tablada part. Tablada, I guess, in Spanish, but definitely it gets butchered. And we can talk about it later. But when I was in the Marines at boot camp, they were just calling me Gonzalez terrorist. They just thought it was funny. So.
Terrorist?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Tablada.
And because I guess some people would use more like the long A in English, like tablada or like...
Yeah, tablada, or some people just, they look at it and they just kind of like, they word vomit and they don't even know what to say. So. Right. But now, overall, yeah. Thanks for having me, though.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is not what I was expecting. This is pretty cool. So.
What were you expecting?
I wasn't sure. Maybe we'd be walking in. It's just your kitchen table, and you have all these great graphics and make it look like you're in a studio. But I can confirm it's a studio. So.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I had to go buy the paint. So I changed the paint color. So behind you, it used to be, there's a squirrel gray. Yeah. But unfortunately, every time I move pictures around on the wall and I have all these drywall anchors, then I make a mess and I have to go and patch it and then I have to repaint. Well, I ran out of the squirrel gray paint. So I was just like, I don't want to have to go buy more paint. So I just went with a paint that I think my son used in his bedroom. Yeah. It's kind of a, darker blue, almost a royal blue. So I painted it with that. And the other thing I was trying to do.
It's almost like I knew with my hat, I guess, that I chose today.
Well, it's just the effects. I have these like lights that I have on, and they have different color filters, but it was really hard for me to even get the wall to pop with that blue I was looking for. Yeah. Because I am using an increased powered light above us, and then the lights we have behind you. So I was just like, you know what? I'll just forget trying to make it blue. I'm going to paint the walls blue.
It looks good. I mean, I didn't even notice that now that you kind of pointed out, I can kind of see a little bit of the difference. But yeah, no, overall, it's great. And I mean, on the camera, it looks perfect. So. And
it's a little hard, I guess, as the host, since obviously this is my podcast, and I see every episode several times, right, in the editing, and other people may only see a few. Yeah. But you assume you put on this lens as if every viewer has viewed every episode, and I just get tired of this. Like, I don't want things to be the same set and the same look. And I've moved the American flag because I just sometimes get tired of it looking too static.
But that's probably what makes anything great, especially maybe a podcast, is the host itself is constantly trying to update. Because if you relied on me or someone else, I would just give you an update, when I was here. So it's good to probably get eyes on it. So that's awesome.
So Tablada is Gonzalez Tablada, and I believe in Spanish culture that's a combination of what your mother's maiden name and your father's last name.
So typically that is. It's actually a combination though on my father's side of his. So my grandmother and grandfather. Mm-hmm. So they were. Both my parents are Cuban, but Gonzalez Tablada comes from Cuba on my dad's side, so it's my grandparents. But when they came here, My dad came here, I think, in the early 70s. They actually dropped 2 other last names.
Oh, really?
So they had 4 last names. I don't even know what they were, but to kind of just, one, they came here, but also he said it was just too much to fill out everywhere.
Yeah.
And my mom's last name is actually De las Cuevas, which is from the caves or of the caves.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and some of that's is being Catholic as well.
Yep.
I remember I had a coworker who had like when she went to school, I think she went to a Catholic school, and she had like 7 names.
Yeah.
And it was, and I would always have her repeat them because I wanted to be able to memorize. Like, okay, I want to get this right.
What's funny about that though is, for me, it's like I could barely fit. So my middle name is Alexander. So trying to fill out a Scantron with my full name never happened. So I can't even imagine having 7 or 4, 20 last names like a lot of my prior cousins, I guess, from Cuba or wherever.
Yeah. Or if you do have 7, at some point, if you are going to try to conform, then which
ones do you pick?
Which ones do you use, right?
I guess for my family, the Gonzalez and Tablada had always been more the dominant of my grandmother and grandfather's side.
Okay.
So they decided to keep those.
Got it.
That's as far as my knowledge goes on the last name thing.
So you are, I met you, and we'll talk about how we met here shortly, but essentially the primary reason you are here is the president of the North Alabama Commercial Realtors.
Yes.
Or is it realtors, or do you do like just like real estate?
So it's just real estate, commercial real estate in general. Okay. Realtors, technically when people get technical about that, realtor is actually it's not even an agent. It's just a part of the National Association of Realtors.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to be a licensed agent to be a realtor. But yes, it's realtors just in general, just describing the real estate agents. So,
well, and it's just, I think, complicated enough because just even when you're trying to do research, you'll see it referenced different ways.
Yeah.
Even something like Nowcom.
So what I typically just say to people, my girlfriend gets mad because she works for Capstone Realty for residential.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I'm a broker, I'm a realtor. And technically I'm eligible to be a broker now. I just haven't, taken the test to be called a broker. So she always corrects me on that. But typically you'll see on commercial side, most people just say they're a broker. And that kind of indicates, okay, he's on the commercial side.
Okay.
Until my girlfriend corrects me that I'm not one yet. So.
And which exam is it you have to take for that?
That's just it's just kind of like, so when you first get your license, it's just the residential and commercial, we all take the same licenses.
Okay.
So you get your intro, essentially just your agent's license. You wait 2 years, and after your second year, you're eligible for the broker's license. And it's just kind of the same process where you'll take a test or a class. A lot of people now take it online, and then you go to the state.
Okay.
Huntsville or here, go to Birmingham, take the test, and you can become a broker.
All right. So you are, interestingly, a lot of the people that I've met lately in just different walks of life, some of them are guests that are going to be upcoming, are Huntsville natives that went to Grissom.
Yeah.
And I think you're gonna break the trend now of people that I've met. It's seemingly everyone that I seem to have come in contact with, like, where'd you go to high school? I went to Grissom. So you went to Catholic high school.
Yep.
Now, did that change names?
It
Is
did.
that now John Paul II?
Yeah, so it's Pope St. John Paul II Catholic High School.
Okay.
So they'll keep adding names, but yeah.
And that's right next to Madison Academy.
It is now. Yeah, the new location is.
Okay, where was the old one?
So I think they're making it into some sort of mall or something like that now, but it's the corner of Wynn and Bradford.
Oh.
It was an old office building.
And that's where the new cyber high school is?
Okay, so where the cyber high school is, if you're looking across the street, not catty corner, but directly across the street on the same side, it's that corner right there is where I went to school.
Interesting.
Yeah, my senior year, our art closet, it was just a closet. So we'd go out, get some supplies. It was pretty, it's probably maybe not double this room, but about that. We came in the next year and they're like, oh yeah, that's the new math room. So they converted it to, we were running out of space, and my parents were probably paying good money for us to go to a facility that desperately needed an update.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did they ever have to use trailers?
No, we weren't big enough for that, but they were getting to the point where they would have had to. We probably had about maybe 400 or 500 students max at Catholic High.
Okay.
It's probably about what they have now there at the new John Paul II. But no trailers. But we called our auditorium the gymatorium something else because we used it for sometimes for our prom. We used it for our pepper rallies. We used it for
multi-purpose.
Yeah, dances, to eat in there, drama, PE class. I mean, anything and everything.
So it's only 400 to 500 total.
Total, yeah. I graduated with about 69, 70 students total.
And it was it's 9 through 12.
It's 9 through 12.
Okay.
Typically, most kids in Catholic High or now John Paul II will come from St. John's, Holy Spirit, and we're all friends with those Grissom and Huntsville High and Bob Jones people. So.
Yeah. So you born and raised here, right?
Yes.
Born at Huntsville Hospital?
Yep.
What were some of, gosh, I'm dying to kind of talk to someone like you who's been in the area a while,
yeah.
Your whole life. I shouldn't say a while, right? Your whole life. And find out like, hey, when did they build this? You know, as I kind of drive around and try to acclimate myself to the area, I realize, okay, that interchange or, that expansion wasn't there. I just have a couple of curious questions. Were you here? Well, I don't want to jump too far ahead yet with what you're doing right now as the leasing agent or the leasing broker at Stovehouse.
Yeah.
But was Stovehouse, for example, in operation as formerly manufacturing stoves, or was Lincoln Mill in operation? Was Lowe Mill in operation? Does that make sense?
If Lincoln Mill was in operation, I didn't know it. Same with the Stovehouse area, to be honest. I mean, if we can be frank on this podcast, is where people would go. And, that was known as where people would buy drugs on Governor's Drive, to be completely honest. I mean, it wasn't, you didn't go there. I mean, I got in trouble.
Part of town.
Yeah, and I got in trouble one time because I knew a guy, he was older than us, but his nickname was Sketch. So it was literally a sketch part of town to go to, Governors. So it's kind of amazing to see Governors go from Governors, Lincoln Mill area, and really places that you just didn't go to. Mm-hmm. Not that you would go there and you were going to get shot like it was a bigger city or anything, but it just wasn't a place that people from Huntsville would typically go to unless they lived there or had a reason to go. So it's really weird to see even South Huntsville, and I'm maybe jumping the gun.
That's fine.
Go from when I was growing up, the hot place to live, and it was just kind of cool and young, and everyone went to Grissom or Huntsville High, and now South Huntsville is kind of, it's funny hearing even my girlfriend Valerie will talk about it, or other people saying, oh, that's the old part of town, and now the new part of town is Governors and Lincoln Mill, and even Bridge Street is now considered old. I can remember when Bridge Street opened in 2008 or 9 when I was junior, senior in high school. I mean, that was like, oh, this is such a cool place, because all we had before that, before the Rave, which is now, I forgot what it's called. It's the movie theater close to the Target Shopping Center, South Huntsville. Mm-hmm. It's originally called the Rave. That opened in 2006. So before that, we'd all go to Hollywood 18, and that was the cool place to go. Yeah. And then once the Rave opened, Hollywood 18 was the place that all the kids, self-admittedly I did a couple times in high school, would sneak into. So it kind of went from the it place to the, man, no one goes there except for free movies or cheaper movies because the Rave is full or something.
Right.
So, yeah, it's weird to see Huntsville grow how quickly it has, because when I left in 2009 to go to Alabama for college. 2010, I stayed here for UAH my first year. I told myself I was never coming back to Huntsville. There's not enough. It's not cool. It's not fun. Yeah. And now my sister says I'm like the Huntsville person that just talks about Huntsville all the time. So it's kind of funny. Leaving for about 10 years kind of gave me a
perspective
and an appreciation for the Huntsville community and just how different really Huntsville is, even from the rest of Alabama, but just how nice the people are, how warm, how welcoming. And, moving to DC, to Atlanta, to Miami, and just traveling around in general, Huntsville really is, it's a unique place in the way that people want to help out other people, and there's not a lot of ulterior motive. Or Miami, I love it, especially that I'm Cuban and just love the heat, the Dolphins, all that. But sometimes you feel like it's like no one's there to help you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
It's just too big.
I think
everyone's in it for themselves, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think it's too big. It's there are pockets, even in Miami, and I'm sure maybe in Virginia you experience that too. There's pockets of people, and there really are great people in Miami, Atlanta, all those places. But it just seems like Huntsville, that's our thing. Our thing is to be nice to people. That our thing is to help out. Our thing is to, even though we're in Alabama, I mean, we're creating things, doing things that, in my mind, you don't see in a lot of even these bigger cities because it's so concentrated here with people who just have such a drive that, I don't know, you just don't see in a lot of communities.
And you're seeing, well, a few questions before I ask that question. So it's only been recently that Huntsville took over as the number one, not just the place to live in the U.S., but the largest city in Alabama.
Yeah.
So as you grew up, I'm assuming that title was always with Birmingham.
Yeah.
And where was Huntsville's place within Alabama? Was it always just a strong second?
No.
Talk to me a little bit about intra-Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I'm not as, now I can give you all the numbers and statistics and all that, right?
Yeah. Benefit of retrospect.
Yeah, exactly. Growing up, it wasn't as much of a thought, but Huntsville was just known, especially for the kids who grew up here, the people who were from here or who moved here at a young age. It was just known as like the NASA place. So it was cool for your family. It was cool for your dad or your mom. And that was about it. All of our plan, and a lot of my friends did, was to get the heck out of Dodge, get out of here, get out of Huntsville, because Huntsville was cool, but it had nothing that anyone in our perspective from 18 to maybe 40 really cared about. Again, I think it's also growing up in a smaller city, right? Which it is a smaller city than bigger cities when you're looking at, I'm traveling to Miami every year or going to Atlanta to see my cousins. Mm-hmm. So it is smaller. But I guess what I didn't realize is that, yes, it's smaller and there may not be a lot to do, but there's no traffic, So for me, leaving work in Atlanta, sometimes you leave at 5:30, you're home at 8. So I didn't really think about, or 7:30. I didn't think about, man, yeah, I leave work here, but I'm home in 10 minutes, so I got 2 or 3 hours to do something, while it really is kind of a rat race in some of those bigger cities to get home. So I guess it's just a different kind of life. I'm not saying I did enjoy those bigger cities. Part of me could have lived in Miami forever, or Atlanta or DC. It just didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
But there is something, and I think you mentioned to that fact first time we met, just it is kind of nice being able to, if I'm coming to your place and you're 30 miles away in Huntsville, typically it's going to take me, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
What about in DC? Or where you're from, Virginia?
Oh, you better, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a certain time it will work or it won't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Just based on trying to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but later I'm going to run a clip where you were interviewed in your position as president of Nowcom, where on the mixed use development, the Constellation. And we'll watch that later, but essentially you make that comment of the live, work, and play concept is strong and actually is doable in a place like Huntsville.
Absolutely.
Where typically in the rest of the country, maybe only one of those three levers comes into play.
Yeah.
Or no pun intended, or just two, but maybe it's very rare to have all three.
Yeah.
And some of that depends on the industry you're in. But when you typically work in the government contracting arena in other parts of the country, you're going to be commuting into your place of business. And here the commute's not as far, right? It's not as arduous, and it does give you that time back that you were talking about.
Absolutely.
So what about just as a community? You said you were into soccer. I'm sure kickball was later, right? That's kind of a fun thing to do as an adult. But we all played kickball growing up. But just talk to me a little bit about the communities that you were, the sports and other things that you were involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually funny. A lot of people, I did play soccer growing up, a lot of it, and I still play some adult league, nothing professional or anything like that. I got into soccer because my dad so Cubans, we play a lot more baseball than anything.
Uh-huh.
My dad just wasn't it's not that he wasn't into sports, he was just more of a power lifter kind of thing. And so he was benching like 315 at weighing 145 pounds.
Oh, my.
that was more of his thing. But when we moved here, they just kind of signed us up for soccer, and I kind of was always better at soccer. Basketball was kind of ruled out. I still play basketball now. Sure. Sometimes I'll get up, play at 5:30 in the morning, but at 5 foot, questionably 7, you're not unless you can shoot really well. It just wasn't my thing. So I played soccer growing up, loved it. My freshman year of high school there at CHS, or Catholic High School.
Now, which position in soccer were you?
I mainly played wing.
Okay.
Just because I could run all day.
Gotcha.
So I would literally, a whole tactic in high school for me at wing, and I wasn't the best player on the team, but I was, I'd say one of the more consistent, is that I would literally sprint up and down the entire 90 minutes. And so I actually would go from cross-country practice. So I started cross-country practice my freshman year of high school to be in shape for soccer. So I'd do cross-country practice, run 5 or 10 miles, and then go do soccer right after.
Wow.
It paid off. Actually, I ended up being better at cross-country than soccer. My fastest mile was like a 4:24, and my fastest 5K was like a 16:40, which it's nice, but it's not getting you to college either.
Yeah.
So,
and that 4:24, I think, was in the Marines.
So 4:24 is actually, ironically, it was my senior year of high school. We didn't have track. They got it the year after I left. I was so mad about that.
Okay.
And I just was like, man, I know my mile is my best thing. I've never been able to train for it. So I just sprinted as fast as I could in a 5K race the first mile. And I clocked myself, and I saw it at 4:24. My dad was like, after, like, oh my gosh. And then, it kind of messed up my time for the 5K. I got real tired after. I ran like a 17:15 or something like that after. But
you gassed out a little bit.
I did. But the guy that always beat me, Mark Fisher, and if he's out there listening, I love you. He was really good at running. But I was like, I'm going to beat this guy in the mile. He still was in front of me. I mean, this guy ran a 15-something that race, and he still ran like a 4:19 mile. It's, some people, they have the it factor of that. Yeah. And this guy had it.
Hey, check this out. So I got this prepared for you.
Okay.
You look at whatever screen works, but there's Mark Fisher. So this is like the Chickasaw Invitational, I believe.
Yeah.
If I scroll all the way to the top, it'll take forever because this is like the 3rd or 4th event. I think there was 239 runners in this.
Yeah.
And you finished 17th. So you're down here, if everyone can see my cursor. And 1828. So I don't remember which, this is, let's see, 2009.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's the year that you graduate.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's Mark Fisher up here. You finished 2nd.
Yeah.
And that's 1642.
Yeah. He was a lot faster than me.
Do you remember this, the course here at Chickasaw?
I don't remember particularly everything about the course. This course, I believe, is more of a slower course. So you have your kind of, in cross country, you'll have your flat courses, which give you your faster times.
Right.
And then you have kind of, and if it's raining, for example, even if it's not like a completely flat course, that really throws people off too. I mean, there was one race, Mark Fisher actually, him and my older brother did cross country. He never actually, sometimes they would pick him up at the end so they could hurry up and start the other race. He gave blood right before the race.
Oh, really?
Mark Fisher did. He still ran like a 17-something, but I beat him that race, and I was so excited. I ran past him. I was like, yes, like finally I beat Mark Fisher.
Because he gave away a quart of blood.
Yeah.
Well, here's what's interesting. Let's go back to this.
Yeah.
Look at the, I just saw this. So we just moved from Virginia, and my son didn't run in the state finals, but like the state meet for Virginia, right?
Yeah.
And we went up there, and it was, we had 1A through 6A, and they all had their own 5Ks, right? Boys and then girls, or girls and boys. And it was this huge Middleburg, Virginia. So it's huge, like horse country.
Yeah.
Like Robert Duvall, like still lives there, that actor. And so it was kind of a hilly course. But what was interesting, and this is the case too, the first place guy beats the second place guy by 16 seconds. I mean, that's where, and then we saw this at the state meet too, in Virginia, where the first place guy won by like 25 seconds. So there's your like elite runner.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have your second place, and then even third place is those two guys smoked. Your Mark is in second place right there, and Nathan first. They just smoked everybody else.
Yeah,
but there is quite a separation in even those top runners. It's not till you start getting down to like 5th and 6th where they start to kind of bunch up a little bit.
Oh, absolutely,
and they really separate themselves.
And if you pulled up like even the 6A people, for these years or any year, I mean
They're like sub 15.
Yeah, some of these guys. I remember there's a guy, Blaze Benz from Grissom. I don't know what he ended up doing, but this guy was running almost 15s, almost 14-minute 5Ks. I mean, it was, that I could train as hard as I wanted to, and I trained a lot, and it was more. And it ended up being a sport. Like my senior year, I actually went from, you can see the 1820.
Yeah.
And then when I went to the boot camp, I was running at 1640. So that really was my leap year. But even then, there's just guys, and I'm sure like in any sport, they're just so different. I mean, Blaze Benz was averaging less than 5 minutes a mile.
Sure.
How do you keep up with someone like that?
So, I mean, how do you, some of it's just physical, right? You get older. We all went through puberty at different times, and you develop, get some stronger muscles later in life or endurance, whatever it may be. But so some of this, there's the physical side of it, but talk me through. I've never really gotten a great answer out of any cross country runner or distance runner. Like, how do you make yourself faster? Is it just interval training? Is it getting your heart rate up?
So it's kind of funny when I tell people this, but like the first thing is, I mean, when I first, for example, my freshman year, when my buddy Keegan was like, "Hey, come do cross country," and I was like, "What is that?" And they told me I was going to run a 5K. I thought I was running 5 miles, and it wasn't. It was 3.1. And I ran like a 28 or 29 minute 5K. The first time I ever ran a 5K.
Yeah.
I threw up my brains afterwards. I mean, I threw up a lot. After that, it was a lot of training. You just have to be doing it for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Be very patient and run a lot. But when you do run, what people think is there's just a variety of different ways. You have to continually shock your system, for example. Mm-hmm. So you need to do interval training. You need to do mile training. Our cross-country coaches used to have us run 5 miles, for example, right? So you want to run more than the 5Ks. Your body needs to be conditioned to do more than what you're running. So if you're running a marathon, you should be able to run 30 miles,
right? Theoretically.
Marathon's a little tougher, for sure, on the body. But so we train for over the 5Ks. We rarely ever ran just a 5K at practice. We'd run 1,000-meter 12-time sprints. So you do a sprint of 1,000 meters, come back, you had about 10 seconds, and you run the next. And you do that for 12 times straight. After the 12th time, I mean, after the 7th, there's a lot of people dropping out.
Right.
I think it's just consistency, maybe. I mean, you're a former military guy as well.
I'm not.
Well,
but.
Yeah. Well, just...
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Just anything really that you do, it's a lot about consistency. But running... It really is what you eat.
Yeah.
My coach, so my senior year, one thing that I made, one of the biggest changes that I made was not drinking lemonade during cross country. And it literally improved my time. Maybe it's psychological, but that slight little dehydration of lemonade was taking away. You could see the 1820, 1830.
Really?
And then I was able to get it down to, I think my senior year at my fastest was like a 17:10 or something. It wasn't until boot camp that I ran faster than that. But yeah, it really is just doing you'll do like a mile, you sprint it, you come back sprinting the mile, you have maybe 5 minutes, if that, then you sprint the next one, come back, and then you do it 3 more times after that.
Yeah.
So you're puking a lot, you're running a lot, you're hating yourself a lot. I remember every single race. As soon as you're about to start, it's always like 7 a.m. I don't know why we had to run so freaking early. Everyone said it was going to get too hot. Yeah, but...
Your coach had to go to work.
I know, that's true. But these on Saturdays, too.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I remember right before every race, I'm like, dang, I got to run 5 or 3.1 miles right now. It's like, it would always kind of sucked a little bit. But it was just consistency, running a lot. But yeah, interval training, I always tell people, if you want to get faster in running, you can run 5 miles, you can run 3 miles. If you don't do interval training, you'll never significantly increase your time.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll change topics. But my first 5K, I had never been a runner until like 5 years ago.
Okay.
I kind of started into it, and I think I had just run a Ragnar. Now I was going to run a half marathon. And I had never run like a 5K. So I went Ragnar, I ran like 16 miles total. And then my son had like an invitational race at his high school. So, and he was going to run a 5K as an 8th grader. And the next year he'd be on the cross country team. So we do like the open meet. And I'm feeling kind of good. I'd been training a while. At that point, I finally had like proper shoes. I think I had like the shorts I like to wear, like I'd wear my AirPods. I just like had my setup.
Yeah.
And we start out, and there was in the open race, there might have been even like a 5-year-old that ran. It was like 5 through, I think the oldest person was in their 70s. But most people were like in high school or college that just weren't participating in the races that day. And it was just so deflating where we start out and, I'm feeling good. And I can't remember what my time was, but there was like this kid who was running and he was in jeans. He was probably 9 years old, had his hands in his pockets because it was a little bit chilly that morning, trying to stay warm. And he had passed me. I couldn't catch back up to him. Like with his hands in his pocket. I'm like, I'm training every day and I'm feeling like I'm getting better.
Yeah.
It was like just so humiliating to see this little kid just like bust past me. And all my kids, I can't believe like, I'm older, of course, but like some people are just really good at running and have like that motor.
Yeah. And I mean, I was never a Division I or top athlete, even though by mile time, maybe I could have done something more with that. But
yeah,
same thing. I've always been better at running. I guess like sports and soccer, I've always been the kid that could run a lot longer. So I do think it's like anything. I mean, it's natural. I mean, you've probably seen it, guys who play basketball. Same 2 guys play every single day with each other, but there's just one kid that can dunk and just shoot threes nonstop. And it's just like, I could train every day, but I'll never beat this guy. Yeah. And it's part of it. It's life.
Yeah. Some people just have that gift, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what makes it great is like, well, everyone offers something. Yeah, and it's kind of depending on what that is. All right, so let's transition. I want to pull up your LinkedIn page, and not to completely skip over your time at UAH and Alabama, but I want to just kind of show here for the viewers. This is from Eric's LinkedIn, and he was at 1 year at UAH. Actually, that might have just dropped off the screen a little bit. Let me try to pull that up. There we go. In 2009, and then. Well, actually, you know what? I think we do have to provide context. Let's start with that. What you were just doing some general ed at UAH to transfer to Alabama and Tuscaloosa?
Yeah. So I did my freshman year at UAH. It was mainly due to my laziness senior year of high school. I didn't get any scholarships and ended up picking UAH just to save some money. But a couple months in, all my friends were at Bama, so I really wanted to transfer there. I actually ended up going to Marine Corps boot camp that summer.
Okay.
So I joined the boot camp, or Marines, enlisted on the reserve side so I could pay for college.
Got it.
And I also wanted to be in the Marines, but then that's how I ended up at Bama the following year, my sophomore year.
Okay, so wait a minute. You went to boot camp after your 1 year at UAH or before you went into UAH?
After. So, yeah. So I did a year at UAH, talked to a recruiter, told me my life would be a lot better in the Marine Corps, so I joined the Marines in the summer. Yeah, May of 2010 is when I went to boot camp.
Were there any other branches of the military you considered?
Air Force, only because my great-grandfather was a Purple Heart and had a silver medal in World War II as a pilot. And it's actually another crazy story how he took a plane. That's how he ended up here in Miami, leaving Cuba. But so that was something I always wanted to do. My uncle was in the Army, but Air Force was really the only other thing. But besides that, I actually ended up joining the Marines, one, because I thought it was the coolest. But my other buddy, Joey Chipman, had just joined. So I kind of it was like a competition almost, which I didn't realize ended up with a 6-year contract. So.
Yeah. So 6-year contract.
Yeah.
And that's smart. I mean, you got to do what you can to pay for school.
Yeah.
Right. And they offer that. So then what did that look like how often did you have to do a reserve assignment or some sort of training when you were in school, or was it deferred?
No, so definitely not deferred. They don't care enough to work around your schedule, unfortunately. So what I would do is, so when I went to boot camp 2010, me and another one of my buddies, Parker Bird, who was also in the same unit, we were what's called deferred, since we were going to college and everyone always would make fun of us in boot camp for it. We didn't have to do what's called Marine combat training, and then you go to your job school afterwards. So we from 2010, the summer, went to boot camp, came back, and then once a month I had drill at my unit, which was Kilo Battery 214. We were a HIMARS unit, so we shot missiles. So, for example, the missiles, GPS guided missiles, the missiles that killed Saddam Hussein's sons, the big missiles, that's what we would shoot, like 100, 150 miles away. And I was a field radio operator. So, just fancy terms is I made sure the radios worked and I called in the missile strikes. Never got to do it, overseas or in country, but we definitely did a lot of training and, just being part of the Marines, going from boot camp and then the following summer doing Marine combat training for about a month and a half in North Carolina. And then went to the Mojave Desert. They call it 29 palms, or some Marines call it 29 stumps because there's no palm trees out there. It's the desert. I did that for 3 months. And then after that, it was just, once a month you go to drill, and then 2 weeks out of every year you have some sort of like longer training. And then if you get deployed, you do what's called a workup and then go from there. And we almost got deployed in 2014, but they ended up pooling the mission altogether, which was probably better. I mean, I was a little upset at the time, but
yeah,
just seeing how things unfolded in Afghanistan, maybe it was better that we didn't go.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
So, is it help me understand? So, when you're in reserves as a college, the only payment really while you're there is they're paying for school, or do they also subsidize and give you some?
So yeah, I thought they paid more. I confused the National Guard with every other branch. Turns out recruiters like to bend the truth a little bit. So no, I mean, they paid for a small portion of my college. I would get through the GI Bill. There's like a reserve. Mm-hmm. They paid me like $500 or $600 a month.
Okay.
And then, you get a couple $100 more when you go to drill. You don't always feel like it's worth it when you go, but no, I mean, they did pay some, but I would say what the Marines did for me, and, if any of the Marines that are in the unit are listening, they know that it takes a while to grow up as a person or as a man. It took me I got in trouble a lot in the Marines too, here and there, just from talking back. But what it did show me was respect, leadership, chain of command, which I feel like a lot of people have forgotten nowadays. In general, you just have to treat people with a certain respect, but also understand that, as an individual, what the Marine Corps showed me really was that there's always more than just you, right?
Yeah.
So NowCom is more than just Eric Gonzalez in 2 years. I won't be the president, and same thing with where I work at the Chase commercial. So what the Marines showed me, and I'm glad that I did it, was just the value of respect, leadership, and just being proud of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
is this your, I found this job description.
Okay.
And I think this is it.
Yeah.
It's a 0621,
21,
right?
0621 is what we call
0621.
Yep.
So it shows you engineering, artillery, infantry.
So the field radio operator.
Hold on, I just got to make sure I know how to scroll through my own thing here. Okay.
Yeah, I would say the field radio operator can really go to any unit, but yeah, you'll typically see it infantry or artillery or really anything, honestly. So
look at these requirements: complete the field radio operator course, possess a driver's license, be a U.S. citizen, must have a secret security clearance. So I guess they put you in through that while you were at school, and then that pops.
So yeah, we actually had a guy who apparently lied on his security clearance.
Oh, really?
And we were in the Mojave Desert, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, forgot his name, Johnson, get up."
You're out.
And they didn't kick him out. He got busted down a rank. I think they still kept him in that.
He had some questions to answer.
Yeah, well, and then sometimes some people lie about health stuff that comes out. And they can't, or even psychological stuff that, for whatever reason, they either can't be or they just need to have different precautions for those people or medicine, whatever.
So you were an expert on all of these radios, like the 104, the 193, the 138.
I was an expert, if that's what you want to call me. For sure, I could get it going. But what I would always tell people, especially in the field, when you're out there you're setting stuff up, getting ready to shoot practice rounds, I would say I'm only as good as these Vietnam radios, because these radios are from Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
They're super old. The Marine Corps always gets the worst equipment. We always do. So you could do the same thing. I was comm chief the last couple of years that I was in the Marine Corps, so I was in charge of setting up the communications for our particular part of the unit.
Yeah.
We had a couple. You had two comm chiefs or three comm chiefs. But we do everything right, and one day, you're the hero. Everything's working. You're shooting off. The commander's able to call in. We're able to shoot off the missiles. It's great. The next day, nothing works. It's because the military refuses, especially the Marine Corps. We never get the best equipment. So, but yeah, I became an expert.
Were you able to fix the radios, or does somebody else have to do that?
I could fix it if it wasn't physically broken, but yeah, no. Gotcha. Not in the job description, as they say in the Marine Corps.
All right, so let's transition now. So you are out of school, you finish school, you finish your assignment, and I believe you went to an academica. Is that where you went?
Yeah, academica. Yeah.
And so tell us about that. It's a organization that helps public charter schools, private schools.
So it's a 501c3 nonprofit school service provider. So what my job was, for example, was helping, and they already had academica. So what they did is support charter schools. So charter schools are, a lot of people don't know this, they're 501c3 non-for-profit schools. So they are districted for the most part, depending on local ordinances, and this goes into part of the job that I did. So depending on what state you're in, there's certain laws, but that charter school is still like a public school. It's just the funding. So when a person gets funding for a public school, a kid, when it's allocated, typically the government allocates like $1.5 per student, right? This is to make it easier. It's a little more. It's probably like $150 per student or whatever. So they allocate that, and that's how the public schools get their funding. Charter school, you write what's called a contract or an application. You submit it to the state, and then you can open up your own school. So it's technically a public school. It's just operated by a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
So you're still held to almost the same standards as a public school. Not entirely. There's, again, depends on the state that you're in. But you are a public school. I say this just to kind of paint the picture, but
sure.
So 23 years old, a guy named Julio Robina. He was former mayor of a place called Hialeah, Florida. He was hired to be the COO there at Academico. He hired me to help support and start setting up new charter schools across the country. Self-admittedly, at 23, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I think I would have been. I did well. I mean, we ended up getting the first school. It didn't get opened up completely yet, but we did get a school approved, one of the first schools ever to get approved here in Alabama. And, everyone told me that I couldn't do it, and I was able to.
Wow.
So that kind of felt good at 23 years old. To be the lead project manager, I definitely wasn't the reason or the only reason. I would say there's a lot more people who didn't get credit that did way more than me. And
did they say you couldn't do it because of you, Eric, and you lacked experience, or because it was going to be just too difficult with
a mix of both
precedent that couldn't be overcome?
Well, it had never been done in Alabama, but also they said that I was just too inexperienced. I was 23. Self-admittedly, I didn't know too much, but I was pretty driven. Whenever someone tells me I can't do something, I don't know why, I just get real upset, and so I try to focus in, and I was able to do that. During that time, that was actually during that time, we were setting up the schools. I was going from place to place, but I was actually also working on an app with a friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
So it's called Reality Check. Ended up checking my reality, but we raised like $250,000 while I was still working at Academica, and that was pretty cool. Kind of got my confidence up that I could do something on the side and raise money and kind of do my own business.
And what was the purpose of the app?
So the app was a fantasy gaming for reality TV. So you'd be watching The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or any of those other ones.
The Real World. That was always
The Real World. Some of those, and you could play along and get accrue points and go against people.
Gotcha.
We actually got a meeting on Pitbull's yacht. So Pitbull and the owner of Academica were friends, and they shared a yacht together. Yeah, it was a whole different thing there too. Yeah, I met like Magic Johnson. We like in Washington D.C. when I was working there. We were working with the Nationals. So yeah, we were pretty. Academica was pretty well connected. But anyway, so yeah, we got this meeting. with a guy named Chris Abreu. He's from Endemol Shine, North America. He was the biggest broadcasting CEO in the world at the time. He agreed to, he liked our pitch or whatever, so he gave us a meeting on Pitbull's yacht in Miami, New Year's Eve of 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I felt really cool. And he told us, yeah, if you get 1 million users or 10,000 users, I'll give you guys $1 million. And he really liked the idea or pitch, everything. Unfortunately, maybe depends. I'm not going to name names or anything, but things went sideways with, the former CEO and other people. And so we just, it didn't get going. And maybe it was a good thing. I don't think it was ready at the time. But what it did prove to me, I know it's kind of a side tangent, but what it did prove to me is that I could kind of build my own things and gave me the confidence to eventually, become a broker and then start doing things like this, president of this Alabama commercial realtors, and I'm 31 years old. So,
well, no, you actually, as I was going to ask you, I was going to make a comment as you were talking, and then as you were talking, it even further cemented my my supposition where you major in accounting, but you haven't done anything related to accounting, right? You're not a CPA, and that's a great, actually foundational, I think a great thing to get a bachelor's degree in, something like accounting, which has so much practicality in business and other things. But in other words, you don't have to go right into being like a CPA.
Yeah.
But clearly, you did the Marines. You have a strong aptitude, right? So some of it's attitude. You couple that with aptitude. You have some smarts. You have some academic learning, and then it seems like just looking at your resume, it's kind of like, hey, what I can take on anything, right? Just give me a little bit of leash. Tell me what you want done, and I'm gonna go do it.
Yeah.
Right. And chartering a school at 23, raising money for $250,000, right, for this app. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, and then we ended up. So I had another app that we started. It's called Spots. So my other buddy Yanni actually started it, and he had started it for a number of years. But through Academica, I was meeting with a guy named Jim Clifton. He's the CEO of Gallup. Really nice guy, and he was. I remember, so because I was a broadcaster, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, for a couple months in my, oh my gosh.
It's going to be fun.
For a couple months of my life, they set me up there to film him. We were trying to, with Gallup and Apple, we were trying to do what's called the super school. So we were trying to get a $10 million school approved in DC. We were going to put it in Anacostia, which is more of the ghetto. Yeah. And, Apple and Gallup would be there, and Google would be helping us code. It didn't work out. Politics, of course, in DC. Anyway, so I asked him, I was like, hey, Jim, you said that you want to mentor someone, and the app wasn't even working. I pretended that it was on my phone, Spots, and I showed it to him. And he liked it. He liked Yanni. Yanni's a very smart guy. Yanni now his dad's the chief scientist at NASA, actually. So about a year later, Jim Clifton ends up giving us $1 million. For Spots. That's where I left Academica and just moved to Spots. Again, things don't always work out the way they need to, but I quit my job and was making $0 in Ubering because I just thought it was cool to be a part of it. So
was that an angel investing type structure?
So exactly. So it was technically one of the seed rounds in a sense.
Okay.
But we never ended up getting the full $1 million. He had pledged $1 million. We ended up probably getting about $400,000 or $500,000. So he was letting us use his the Gallup office in Atlanta. It was kind of cool, as our office for a little bit, and then he would release like $100,000 or $200,000 at a time to help fund us.
Gotcha. So, different rounds of funding.
Yeah. So he ended up that app didn't work out, just a number of reasons, and I just think that the idea was cool, but maybe not scalable to the idea that we thought. But Yanni now is doing, he's working with him and even Tesla or Elon Musk, but still with Jim Clifton. He really likes Yanni, and he's doing coding on. So if you have a satellite up in or if you're, when you're leaving from the Earth to go to space, he actually puts on the coding on these different things, and I'd have to ask him specifically. And so Yanni's just one of those guys. And I think that's kind of where I was trying to get at is I just want to be around something that makes a difference. And if it wasn't that or Spots or whatever, at least I'm a part of people who are trying to be successful and eventually will make something that's successful. So,
do you think that if spots had actually become a thing, do you think it would have had a shorter shelf life just based on the way the American public looks at reality TV? And maybe that's kind of a good thing where, sometimes there's a market for things, but that market only lasts 4 to 7 years.
So Spots was, Reality Check definitely.
Right.
So definitely the first one, Reality Check, I think that it was a product of one, fantasy football was really starting to evolve into a lot of different things and making a lot of money, DraftKings, and FanDuel. That was kind of part of our market analysis. But yeah, I think it would have a short life. And same thing with Spots. We don't have to get into exactly what it was, but it was essentially like you could communicate with different communities where you went. You could stay with people, easily talk to college students. I think it maybe could have worked. I just don't think that for the amount of investment and what we were looking for and the return that we were talking about, I don't think ultimately it would have worked. Yeah. But I think the experience of both helped me understand how to evaluate those things better, I guess.
It's interesting. We were talking about athletics a little bit earlier and just how there's always that one person that kind of separates himself from everybody else, in this case, cross country, but that doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to go on to like national prominence.
Yeah.
It's amazing how statistically how low it is, right? That someone from your community is going to be the next star.
Yeah. Tom Cruise or whatever.
But similarly, how many times have you heard ideas coming off of college campus, university campus, some of which have, are the biggest companies to date.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they all will be.
Yeah.
And there's lots of great ideas, millions and millions of great ideas, right? And so I guess my point is, and just to kind of tip my hat towards you again, to have the attention of someone like Jim Clifton, to actually say, yeah, he's probably been approached many times on lots of ideas.
Yeah. And
actually get him to commit $1 million in different rounds of funding. That's no small feat.
Yeah, I would like to take some credit, of course, but
sure.
It was cool, and especially just the fact that I thought that he looked at me as a 23-year-old kid who was just there to talk to him about something even bigger, and so when he listened to my idea, and then it formed a friendship with one of my own friends.
Yeah,
it's actually one of my brother's best friends. Kind of funny, but it was cool to realize that as long as I paid attention and was honest about where I was, that people would take me seriously or at least give me a shot, and that's all I want.
So let's do this. I want to show some of your footage when you were a reporter, because I think we have to cover this before we go too far into your career.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna pull something up here, and you might chuckle when you see it.
And this is the local student news station.
Yeah, the local student news. So this is when did this happen or occur?
So this was probably 2014 or 2015.
2015. This was posted April 20th.
Yeah. So I graduated college December 2013 with my accounting degree. Okay. Moved to Atlanta for an internship. Came back for another year to get my credits. That summer of 2014, I was like, you know what? I wrote a guy named Dan Levitard. If you know who he is.
Sure, of course.
He wrote me back.
He's Cuban.
He is. So he emailed me back. I was actually at drill for Marine Corps actually, and he said, yeah, you should try it out. So every day that summer, the first month, I was working 40 hours a week for free. I would learn, all they would let me do is learn how to edit the films. Okay. By the end of those 2 weeks, I was training people to edit the films. By the end of the next month, I was training people to be a broadcaster.
Really?
I mean, you can see I wasn't the greatest, but I just wanted to try it out. And you know what? Dan Levitard wrote me back, and he was like my hero sports guy at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I got to try it. So I just applied.
Let's take a listen.
Yeah.
I'm going to play this.
We all have our traditions on game day, such as tailgating and visiting popular stores on the Strip. Unfortunately, next year, one of these stores, the Locker Room, will be relocating. The store's owner, Alex Gatewood, has said customers have come to their defense since the announcement.
We've had hundreds of emails and phone calls and all over the country.
Gatewood is upset to see his store relocate after all these years, but is optimistic that people will still support them. One of the store's employees has echoed the same tune.
We have some of the best customers that you could find. They're always going to follow us, buy from us online, shop, come in store, come see us. The locker room's a tradition, it's not a building.
The locker room has been a staple on the Strip since 1964. The store has not picked out a location at this moment, but still has a year to find a new home in Tuscaloosa. I'm Eric Gonzalez for WVUA.
Oh, gosh. I forgot about that.
Oh, I love it.
We're on to say.
How do you feel about that?
It's funny looking at it now, just because, to be honest, I'm glad that I did it. It's funny looking at it. I realized that I wasn't as great as I thought I was.
That's all right.
But it's kind of cool just to say that
Sure.
I wanted to be a broadcaster. I tried it. I got on TV. There's a couple other clips. I'm sure if you look on YouTube hard enough, you can find them. But no, it was a rewarding experience just to be able to say that I did it, honestly.
Here's one, but I'm not sure if
I might not be in it.
Well, I think.
Oh, this is VO. Yeah.
What does VO mean?
So that's just essentially just like random film tape. So you
B-roll.
B-roll, exactly. B-roll.
Yeah, I could tell because, which is cool.
Yeah.
I've never been a reporter. On Friday, this Friday, I'm actually going to interview Josh Carey, who's the play-by-play for the Trash Pandas.
Oh, wow.
But he used to also be a television news anchor.
Oh, wow.
And so and just kind of, I've been doing my own research, both for this episode with you, but also with him kind of simultaneously. And I could kind of tell that there was some B-roll in here because then later in the footage, there's actually a piece where the audio is cut in.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you is, I was actually proud of myself that I kind of picked up on that. Like, oh, this must not be whatever VO/SOT means. I know that's kind of more of like just uncut, not fully edited.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what I meant by the SO at the time, but yeah, it's just a B-roll. It's just, so at the time when I first started, a lot of the times when I'd upload stuff, I didn't have my own YouTube page, especially back in 2013, 2014.
Oh, sure.
2014, not a lot of people did. But eventually, like, hey, if you want to, start putting packages together, and I looked at it seriously for probably about 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna put a YouTube together. So that's why I uploaded that. But there's a couple more. I'm not sure it shows up on the WA website anymore, but.
Well, I think I'm your one subscriber.
There we go.
Let me look up. I did subscribe.
Thank you.
So
that's why I quit.
I could look around, but
you're good.
But yeah, what a cool experience though, man.
Yeah, I loved it. It was really cool. I think the best experience I had from that was I actually got to interview a couple of guys so that last part when you see me, it cuts and I'm like not in the locker room. I'm in.
Yeah.
That's the indoor facility for the players. So I got to interview a bunch of the players and who ended up being pretty good.
I bet. Especially if they went to Alabama.
Yeah. I was actually a bartender too. And so the bar that I was at was called the Hornies in Tuscaloosa. It was a normal bar, but it was known as the Players Bar. And so I used to serve like Fluker and Jones would come in sometimes, Kirkpatrick. So it was kind of cool. I had a lot of different jobs throughout my life.
Did you notice how in that clip where it went from stereo to mono?
Yeah.
Just little things like that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which most people won't notice. Of course, we're wearing headphones, but if you're listening out of a computer, you most likely wouldn't notice. But
yeah, absolutely.
Those are things that, I'm sure you're like, I got to fix that. Or how did that happen?
Yeah. Well, we didn't have the best cameras.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of people, because it was all a student news. So most people were there for free. So it was hard to get too much assistance on certain things. So it really was just kind of putting it together.
Yeah.
What stopped my pursuance of that career is when they told me $17,000 was the starting off pay, and I was like, well, this was fun.
I think I forgot to when I was mentioning how you graduated with an accounting degree. I guess the question I forgot to ask you was, as you were coming out, and I know you were doing the military reserve thing to help with defray the cost of school, but did you have a plan? And you've also talked about some really cool experiences you've had, very different and varied experiences, and we haven't even finished yet, right? To kind of what you're doing now, but did you have an idea or a goal?
I guess I had the goal in the sense that I was doing an accounting degree and I wanted to be an accountant, but in the back of my mind, I never wanted to be an accountant.
Okay.
So no, I didn't have a goal.
Was that kind of like, hey, this is a safe thing? It's kind of part of the business school. I can get a job if I need it until I figure out what I want to do.
That's exactly, yeah. I did that. My dad had mentioned it early on, like, oh, accounting or something like that's good. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to switch. So I ended up switching to accounting. I kind of told myself that I would do it and become a CPA, but I always knew in the back of my mind, like my first job was actually at NEI Chase Commercial as an intern at 16.
Okay.
That I wanted to do something that was different. That just wasn't you come in, you put in your 7 or 8 hours and you leave. I mean, for me, sometimes, I don't work until 2 or 3 that day, but then I'll work till 9 o'clock at night, So I always knew that I just needed to get a degree, and I wanted in something that, exactly what you said, if I just couldn't find something, you can always start off as an intro level accountant. And right now you can make like $65K just starting off.
Sure.
So
now 3 brothers and a sister.
Yep.
What have all gone to college?
So yes, Jose's the oldest. He was active duty Marine. Actually, he was special forces, low level. He went to college. He didn't graduate. And now he's like director of catering for a big food operations business out of Atlanta.
Okay.
So it's kind of funny. He always brags about how he didn't need it. And then my other younger brother, Christopher Gonzalez, he actually works for Maynard and Cooper here in Huntsville.
Okay.
He's a lawyer. And then my little brother just graduated, Nicholas, as an accountant, and he works in Tampa now, actually.
Okay.
And luckily, nothing happened in the hurricane.
Yeah. Good.
So there were some other people hit, unfortunately, and then my little sister actually graduates as a nurse in December. So they all went to Alabama as well. So I kind of started a tradition. I was the first one to go to Alabama.
Sure. Now, what about your parents? Did they go to college?
They did. My mom did not go to college. She now runs her own interpreting / translating business. I always forget which one's the correct. And then my dad was one of the first engineers out of FIU, which is a school in Miami. So.
Yeah. Okay.
And he was raised super poor. I mean, he was from Cuba and came over when he was 9 years old. He went to Spain, and then he came here. He would tell me like a room this size that we're in right now,
Yeah.
He'd share it with like 3 families. So
yeah, that's I'm always inspired and uplifted by hearing the story of people who've immigrated here.
Yeah.
From and I think that's awesome. Somewhere someone breaks the cycle, right? Whether it's your generation or your parents' generation to be the first to go to college, right? And,
yeah.
And how awesome is that that's a success story of any immigrant, right? To come here and now set the table for their posterity.
Yeah.
And here you are, a highly educated Gonzalez family, and everyone's kind of doing well and set up well for having an independent life.
Yeah. And my dad, if he was here too, he was actually, ironically, him and my godfather, Roy Alonzo, were on the Rick and Bubba show talking about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Talking about Cuba. But the real credit, my dad came over and he's done what he's done and, made my family and my brothers better for it. But it's really my grandparents on both sides. My grandfather on my dad's side, for his dad, was literally working for Bacardi, making him like $1 million a year, probably equivalent of, back then.
Wow.
In 59. He willfully tried to turn the other cheek and not say anything till 64. And then Castro was out of money, so he came and took everyone else's money. So he went from a millionaire who didn't really work that much in his life and was working at Bacardi and doing better, to being a milkman. Moved to Spain. My Spain family ended up stealing all the rest of my money that he had sent over, unfortunately. Not all of them, but whoever these certain family members did. So he decided, knowing that if he stayed in Spain, he probably could have had a better life. But what he told my dad later on, and before he passed, he had told us too, but that he wanted our family to have a better life. So he became a milkman the rest of his life out of Miami, Florida, just so my dad, could have a shot of now he's an electrical and computer software engineer. And, my aunt on that side is a head of HR for one of the biggest accounting firms, and my dad's other brother's doing well as well. And then on my mom's side, to kind of get back to my great grandfather I was telling you about earlier. So him and my younger brother, his younger son, my great uncle, were in the CIA, or giving information to the CIA back in, I don't remember when, in the 60s, early 60s. about Castro.
Bay of Pigs,
Yeah,
and all that stuff.
So exactly. A little before that, so before Bay of Pigs, so right when it all started, and they found out that they were giving information. So my grandmother and my great grandmother and great grandfather left their summer home and went to the beach in Cuba. When they came back, my great uncle had been thrown from the top of the house, killed, shot, and they left him there on purpose. So my grandfather said, you know what, F this. He goes and he was a pilot at the time for Cuba, one of the first pilots ever in Cuba. Takes one of the plane and flies to Miami. And that's how my family started. And he was also poor. He was a janitor at a bank. A number of years later, he ended up vice president of that bank.
Really?
Yeah.
There was no attempt from the Cubans to try to shoot the plane down or launch,
back then there wasn't as I'm sure there might have been, but
or get into faster plane and kind of run them down.
Yeah, and this was probably 59, 60.
Yeah.
So just there wasn't,
Sure.
and the other people who worked at that, because there was an airport where he worked at the time. It wasn't the military base, and it was just so scrambled then for Castro. It was such a crazy time.
And most people probably don't have the ability to get into a plane and take off. So
No, definitely not.
there's that, right? They're not expecting that.
No. And then my grandfather, for example, on my mom's side, so now my grandmother who came over with her great grandfather, he, 17 years old, he was actually in the Bay of Pigs or training for it. I had another great uncle who was captured for 2 years and imprisoned and tortured for 2 years in the Bay of Pigs. He, at 17 years old, they wanted him to enlist in the Cuban army, which just meant your life was, they got you from now on. He said no. So they were coming to kill him. They took his passport. He somehow ended up with a fake passport. He smuggles onto a cargo ship, comes over here, and then ends up making enough money, brings the rest of my family out. And he ended up, this guy, my grandfather now, is the reason I do real estate. He was, one of the people part of the South Beach. He wasn't the initial people or anything, but he was around that time doing real estate. He owned 10 different banks at one point. So, just to see my family, all the different things they've done, my grandfather, my dad, it's just hard when you ask me, like, why are you trying these different things? Because, just looking at my own family, they've made such an impact on my life, and I just think they're so cool, and what they've done is just so brave.
Yeah.
That I wanted to be remembered like that, by my own family.
So what was their level of English?
So my grandfather, grandmother, they're like 76, 77 on my mom's side now. They speak perfect English.
Okay.
When they came over, none.
Yeah.
None of them spoke English. So they had to learn.
Yeah. Well, hats off to them for doing that. I know that there are sometimes, this isn't a criticism really in any way, right? Because we all have to come here and grind and work. And there's going to be plenty of people that don't have the time or the ability to learn English. And you'll see people who have been here from whatever country, 20, 30, 40 years, and they don't speak English very well.
Yeah.
But it's also probably because they've been working 6-7 days a week, and trying to make ends meet, sending money back home, wherever home is. And what energy do you have left over at the end of the day to learn English, right? When maybe they're able to just, if they're running a restaurant or a other service business, and other people, maybe they don't have to learn English, right? In their trade. Yeah,
and it really is, commendable when anyone comes over here or someone goes to a different country and learns that language, because like you're saying, it is tough, and it's, unfortunately though, that is what my family realized, is there's a barrier. You'll never get, no matter what country you're in, right? If you go to Spain, you don't speak Spanish. There's just a certain limit, unless you come with money or influence already, that you can reach in that country. If you can't speak to the natives in their native tongue, it's just, unfortunately, that's the case. And fortunately for me, my family realized that long ago. So
I'll tell you, as someone that I used to be fluent in Spanish.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to talk to someone who speaks Castellano from like Spain, or a Cuban, because it's very throaty.
Oh yeah,
or even like Venezuela, where it's so fast.
Yeah,
and it's just the different dialects. There's different vocabulary, and like.
Well, for example, like Cubans, when we say bus,
guagua, right?
It's wawa.
Wow.
Yeah. So then, Mexicans or Spaniards will say autobus.
Right.
Or camión.
Yeah.
Mexicans say camión for everything. While for us, camión is only a pickup truck.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like when you go, think about it, when you're in BFE nowhere, Alabama, and then you go all the way up to like Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
They don't sound the same, do they?
No. I was telling my wife, like sometimes even in the Spanglish, like the word for yard. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times they'll say la yarda or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, you just kind of get used to it because it kind of works,
Yeah.
or it's easy for a Spanish person to use that, just throw an A on it.
Yeah.
Then you start wondering, I can't remember what the word is for yard. La yarda.
Well, and a lot of the Spanish that we speak here, for example, in America,
Yeah.
if you go to Cuba, it's still even different there.
Oh, sure.
Because a lot of, even me, for example, like I do speak Spanish, I speak it fluently, but I wouldn't say that I speak it as a native. So you can tell that I'm not
Right.
a native speaker. So yeah, you just end up sometimes, I guess, mixing words, or even like Miami, there's certain words that people say there, or the Cubans say,
Yeah.
that you don't see if you go to Texas, for example, or even some slang words. So
It's like if you were, I think it's like if you were to say más por allá, it means like it's further that way.
yeah, yeah.
And they'll be like mapaya.
Mapaya.
And it's like, if you don't know, obviously, if you've never studied it, you have no idea they've just truncated 3 words.
Yeah, and that's the normal way that people, even native speaker, I would say mapaya.
Yeah.
Because it's quicker. But it's kind of like English. There's words that are.
But you have the person on the when they're trying to learn, they're looking at the textbook and
Yeah.
it says más por allá, and then
Más por
and it takes a little while when you hear someone say like, wait a minute, what did they just say? Oh, what they did was they just got rid of the S in más. I don't know what they did with por, and then whatever.
Más para allá.
Yeah, they just.
Yeah, más por.
All right, so let's fast forward now to Chase Commercial. So you said you interned there when you were 16. What kind of duties did you do as a 16-year-old? Was it?
I think Charlie, shout out to Charlie and Doug, I guess. They definitely made something up for me.
Okay.
What do you give a 16-year-old at a real estate office? So he was telling me that I was putting in this important data of all the clients that they would send in. I would update it, but they were paying me $10 at the time, and I was 16, so I was ecstatic. But really, it was just more being able to train with Charlie and Doug McCullough. They take me on meetings and stuff. So
This is Charlie here.
that's Charlie right there.
Okay.
He's actually one of the original or one of the more influential people that started Catholic High, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
kind of small worlds.
So this is look at NAI Chase Commercial's team,
Yeah.
and then you go down to you're in the Huntsville broker section. This guy, I believe, just got a big award, right? Like top producer for the year. Eric
he
Emerson?
was actually a former SEALs Navy SEALs officer. But yeah, so right there, the guy with the mustache, if you
Right
go
here?
up. Yeah.
There's Doug.
We call him Mr. NEI at Chase Commercial.
Okay.
You go to the NEI. So NEI is global, as you can see.
Yeah.
It's a global brand. So if you go to Sri Lanka, I'm pretty sure there's an NAI office there.
Sure.
So this year we went to New Orleans, great time, Bourbon Street for our annual conference. And literally, I mean, people from Wisconsin, they had just seen the Packers game. They're from New Orleans, and you could tell they're from New Orleans.
Sure.
People from New York, people literally from overseas would come, and everyone was calling Doug Mr. NEI.
Oh, really?
He's 72 years old, but this guy, him and I drank one night, there in Bourbon Street. The next morning, he runs 5 miles.
Really?
And he's 72.
Oh my.
And he beat everyone, I'm sure. Like, it's just, Doug is, and so really, I think watching him, and he's actually, so the way I was connected to this company was Doug was a family friend.
Okay.
So we were, my little brother Chris and his son Jonathan were like brothers growing up.
Okay.
So that's, it was really nice that they took me on at 16. And, I'm sure I helped some, but Charlie admitted to me later on, like 2 years ago, that they never used that data.
So now you're back.
Yeah.
What brought you back? Let's go through that circumstance of you saying, all right, I think I'm going to go back into the commercial real estate.
So I was actually working, I had worked as I'll back it up a couple years real quick. So
Okay.
Atlanta, I'm working as essentially just one of the founders, whatever, business director at a event and security company.
Okay.
We ended up getting the contract for all of UGA Sports. We did all the security for their stadium. It's kind of cool. See, Evander Holyfield and all them walk into the club sections. That kind of fizzled out. My brother and the other owner had a falling out.
Okay.
He left. It was really awkward. So I left.
Okay.
Because you were just talking,
Your brother left,
he left.
and then you followed him out.
Yeah, because she was talking bad about him, and
Yeah.
it was awkward. So then I ended up taking a job at Georgia Tech. I was business director for a solar company, commercial solar company. We ended up, they actually have, we have a commercial solar carport that powers a third of Mercedes-Benz, actually.
Wow.
So I was working there, but it just wasn't something I wanted to do. I mean, those guys are way smarter than me. What they were doing over there was really cool, but it just wasn't. It wasn't fast paced enough for me. It wasn't what I loved. So pandemic hit. I came back and worked here for about a week or two, actually probably a month, honestly, right when it hit. And it because in Atlanta I was living in an apartment and just I felt so like locked up, couldn't do anything, and I needed to leave. So I came to Huntsville so I could be at my parents' place, move around a little more. And then I just started thinking, man, like after that month I spent here in Huntsville, he was like, you know what? I think I could live at Huntsville again. And that's when and Charlie and Doug had been for 10 years, been offering me jobs at Chase Commercial and nonstop all the time. I actually ended up using Doug when we were looking for properties here in Alabama. I was actually using NEI Chase Commercials as my brokers for Academico. So anyway, fast forward here, 2020, I was like, you know what? I want to do. I want to work real estate finally. It always had been in the back of my mind. My grandfather's big into real estate. He's good friends with Doug and Charlie. Doug's a family friend. And I kind of had been doing sort of, real estate stuff, with Academica. I remember negotiating a deal in California for a building for like $127 million, literally.
Wow.
We didn't get it. It was way too expensive.
Yeah.
So I saw Doug one night, the same night I had it in my head, like, you know what, I want to do it. Jonathan, his son, happened to be out, and we're talking, and Doug rolls up in his truck. And I said, hey, Doug, I wouldn't mind moving back here and working for you guys. And he said, you know what, okay. And the next day, I didn't have to send my resume.
Nice.
He calls me up and says, Charlie wants to meet with you. And then Charlie's like, what do we got to do? Get here. And you know what? They actually ended up putting me for a year. I didn't even do real brokerage like I wanted to. I worked as a property manager, actually the front desk. So I was a front desk receptionist. I went from making like $80K a year to making $24K.
Wow.
But it was worth it. Even the year after, I didn't make much more. Mm-hmm. That's when I started being a broker. It was like half and half that year. But it really gave me a great knowledge of the industry. But yeah, that's how long-winded answer, but that's how I ended up. Yeah.
So then you graduate out of being the front desk receptionist. I'm assuming you have to do some studying and start, getting licenses or whatever, just kind of learn.
So I actually I got my license. So in 2020, when I told Doug I wanted to be a broker,
okay,
by not the next month, but the month after that, I was already licensed.
Okay.
I took a crash course, took it, first test, boom,
Got
it. So I sat with it with a year. I was working some deals underneath while I was working the front desk. They told me not to, but I think Charlie knew it was.
If he didn't, he knows now.
Yeah. And so June 2021, I switch over to be a broker, commercial agent instead of property manager / front desk receptionist.
Right.
They actually even had me be an accountant for 2 months because the accountant, she ended up having open heart surgery. So I ended up working as an accountant for 2 months.
Okay.
But yeah, June 2021, I had been working this deal with my buddy Danny Wisnat and Clay Malone on their triad mixed martial arts. And so Charlie tells me that first week, he's like, my first year I only made $900. He's like, you'll be lucky if you did it. The next week I come back in and I turn in the check, the invoice, and I ended up making $7,000 off of that first one. So, and then Charlie really hooked me up, and about a week after that, he got Stovehouse, and this was right before we put in Noella's and all this other, even before the brewery was there, all that. And he puts me as one of the leading lease agents, and ever since then, I've been able to. It's really helped my career. It's just I was able to land a lot of close some deals at Stovehouse, but yeah.
So take us a little bit behind the scenes, because most people listening to this, watching this, have probably on the private personal real estate side have bought a house or sold a house, and seemingly some people may feel like they're experts at that, right? And that might translate into them selling real estate
Yeah.
for residential. But so on the commercial side, you said you land your first deal. So what does that look like though, kind of day to day, week to week? Are you constantly out looking for the stove houses to say, hey, let us represent you as your broker? And the owner, right, I guess, of that property and the facilities, and they've divided up different units, right, in different businesses. Like, so just how does that work? Because I think I certainly am very much a novice when it comes to what is entailed in commercial real estate.
So, I mean, it would kind of depend on, for the most part, what you're doing. So, yeah, I mean, for Stovehouse, for example, I personally wasn't out looking for it. Vanessa Morris and Mark Elrod out of our office, their senior brokers, kind of made that deal happen. So Crunkleton had Stovehouse before. For whatever reason, it ended up being they're building the Range, is the 50,000 square foot office building right behind Stovehouse.
Okay.
So they gave it up to focus on that, and they just have a lot of other things going on. So Charlie found that listing. But yes, for the most part, like for example, I just got another office listing of 40,000 square feet, I think, out here off exit 9 on 400. The way you do that, really, it's kind of doing things like this. It's meeting people like you. It's just doing deals. So really, when you first start off, you're not that busy. You want to act like you are, pretend that you know more, but you're just not that busy. There's not much out there. Luckily for me, on the commercial sector, NEI or Crunkleton or any of those, but specifically NEI, is so great because it plugs you in to a network that's already existing. It's really, really hard. It is to jump into commercial because you'll probably make almost no money. I mean, even if you make 25 grand, that's not that much, right? The first year or two, especially if you have a family or things like that. So NEI, Doug, the Charlies, the Marks, all had people they already work with. So they say, hey, Eric, if you want to help me out, I don't have time for this $2,000 listing that I have, or this client that's looking for 1,000 square foot, restaurant, very small restaurant, right?
Okay.
If you do it, I'll give you half of it. But you work it, you go it out there, they'll make sure that you're doing what's called either your letter of intent. So if you, for example, if you're going to sign, right now I'm working on a deal at the Target Shopping Center. What you do is you submit, you could say like a proposal or a letter of intent. That's pretty much just saying, hey, we're going to lease our space here, or we're going to lease space at your place. And that's how you represent someone, right? So by doing that enough times, those people have other friends who have other friends who have other friends. But really where you make your money is your listings. So to go back to your original question, those listings, you just have to kind of put yourself out there. So either you got to be part of NEI and do really good marketing, which we have, and you close deals. So, now that we've done pretty well with Stovehouse, Lincoln Center came to us and said, hey, can you help us out?
Okay.
So it's through recognition. It's kind of maybe in any industry where you're doing well, other people want you to come in and help lease.
Got it.
Or sell their property or whatever. I know I didn't go into the specifics of the leasing and sales.
I think that helps a lot. I mean, on one hand, you either have to, if you don't have the relationships, then you're going to the Lincoln Mills of the world to say, hey, let us represent you.
Yeah.
Or if you already have a really good past performance and you have a good network, then when somebody like Lincoln Mill or Low Mill has a need, they reach out to you because they want you to represent them. Then you also probably have someone who, if I came to you and said, hey, I want a podcast studio somewhere in downtown Huntsville, help me.
Yeah.
Right. You have that.
Yeah, definitely.
And those are essentially 3 of the prongs that I can think of, right? That kind of how NAI fits into that.
Yeah. And I think as an agent, for example, I never was involved in, besides sports, in any clubs or anything before Nowcom. I just wasn't, but I realized the value of, especially an agent, commercial agent, right? People have to know you. Sure. There's Huntsville, for example, really any community, even if you go to New York or Miami, for example, even Miami, we used to always say it was the biggest, smallest city, because it's true. In any industry, and I'm sure that you tend to see the same people over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So for me, Stovehouse really helped my career, but becoming president of Nowcom and then not being afraid to message random people on LinkedIn like, hey, I want to meet you. Like, there's not many people who do that, and you kind of have to be that person. I mean, I would say commercial, it is tough, but residential, for example, is maybe even tougher. I've never done it, or more tough, whatever. It's definitely more difficult in the sense that you got to get out there, and if you're not part of Capstone Realty or something like that, I've seen the other people who make it through. You got to be, I mean, literally knocking on doors. You got to be putting on door hangers. You have to be, go on social media and know how to put a geo-fencing so that your marketing is reaching the 18 to 40-year-olds or the 25 to 35-year-olds. So it's a lot of what people think is, oh, well, anyone can sell a house. It's like, yeah, but can you sell 15 different houses, and can they all come under budget, and can you be of value? Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with commercial. Anyone can, in a sense, go out there and lease a space, but the value that I bring is when you come to Stovehouse or when I represent people is, hey, yeah, you can get that deal, but if you get, you could pay $10,000 less a year if you do this,
right? X,
Y, and Z. Or you know what? You don't need to pay $10,000 a year there. Your business would work just as well here, and you're spending $20,000 less. So that's the value. The value is knowing the community. It's knowing the owners. So doing this for me is more just building. I mean, it's not just about money or reputation, but it's part of it. If I want to get bigger in commercial real estate, I have to continue to put my name out there, because that's just agents. You have to be top of mind for people always.
So let's, because Stovehouse is one of your customer or clients, right? Like, what is it they're looking for?
Stovehouse,
if they could choose from 5 of the best property or commercial real estate property management in Huntsville, why do they choose you?
So really credit them. I do want to thank Danny and Patty Yancey. They're the owners there at Stovehouse. They didn't choose me. I would like to say that they did.
Well, your organization.
They chose my organization, but particularly Vanessa and Mark. So I was there for the initial meetings, but I've since brought my value. But the value was the reputation of Vanessa Moore specifically. She just had such a great. Vanessa will do about 200 real estate deals, retail deals a year. A lot of them are real small. But the good thing about her is she's seeing so many different concepts, so many original ideas, so many homegrown ideas. So then when someone like Stovehouse, Danny and Patty really wanted Stovehouse, and I hope that we've done it, and I think that they have, the feel of like, this is Huntsville. This is, there's not really a chain store per se in Stovehouse. Like El Cazador is everywhere, but it's still a Huntsville, Birmingham kind of thing. So for Stovehouse, we were just looking. What attracted us, or Danny to us, was just our experience in retail, because we can reach, I guess, a lot of different clients that not a lot of people will. And they were impressed about how Vanessa doing. Once you're in commercial real estate, you'll see there's a lot of people who don't want to do certain deals. Like if it's not making them $15,000, they're not going to take the deal. Yeah. Vanessa, Mark as well, but Vanessa, more to her credit, will take those $1,000 deals. There's maybe she'll make $300 after the split with your broker, right? Mm-hmm. But that's what Stovehouse needed. Stovehouse, if you've been there, is very, very small suites compared to if you go to Bridge Street, they're a lot bigger, right? For the most part. So we needed, ironically, the smaller tenants, but it was going to be done in such a way that it'll make a bigger impact, which Stovehouse has done. So really our first, we didn't, so they signed me in June 2021. My first person that I signed that I felt like a failure at the time was October, and that was Noella's. Okay. The flower place. They've done really well. They've since expanded to the next suite. But we really didn't start signing people until like January of this year. But it just, once Noella's hit, it did well. You'll always, there's a lull in retail. So after Christmas, even before Christmas, people are gearing up to spend a lot of money, or for end of year to close their balance sheets and things like that. Yeah. So they tend not to spend as much or sign new leases until you'll see it about February, March timeframe. I don't know what it is, but it's how it works typically in retail. And it worked the last couple of years here in Huntsville the same way. So when February, March hit, and we signed the fits, Peachtree interior design, the Vessel, Party Prep, and Bell Mason back to back to back to back to back. And then I think I also had about another 5 or 6 people like at the same time at different places. I kind of felt vindicated of, man, it's taken a while for Stovehouse to get going, or my career in general. But once one hits and people like what's going on, and I think people do like what's going on at Stovehouse, the event center and the brewery opening up too helped. So,
did you notice my light just went out?
Yeah.
But very quickly I was able to put a new battery in.
I like it. That's pretty good.
I'm sorry and that's the one thing I can go to a screen and hide myself, right, while I do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask you this question. So like you said, the Target shopping center. Which Target? The one off of 72?
South Huntsville.
Oh, South Huntsville. Okay.
Carl D. Jones, yeah.
So is it more likely when a developer comes in and you're gonna have a Target store in there, and then there's gonna be other things that flank it? Do they often hire then like an NAI to represent them, to say, all right, here's kind of what we're looking for to be surrounded by the flagship?
Yeah.
Because I'm always like curious, like how much advance notice or advance the number of years in planning, where seemingly something like gets like the perfect corner spot, like whoever it is.
So depending on the size, something like a shopping center or a Stovehouse, typically once it opens up. So like Stovehouse now, for example, right? Now everyone says, oh, Stovehouse is great. It's going well. Danny and Patty started this project like 2014, 2015.
Okay, wow. So it's 7 years in the making.
Yeah. So commercial real estate, the good and very annoying and bad thing about it at times, it is a long process. Mm-hmm. Like my first deal, for example, the one that I closed June of 2021. This is a small deal. It's not even a development, right? Mm-hmm. I started working with him. This is my buddy in November of 2020.
Really?
And that's a short time frame.
Yeah.
So typically when you do a listing for someone, you want to do a listing for a whole year, because just a listing of a small shopping center will take you, Stovehouse, it's taken me a year just to lease it out. It's about perception. So Target, for example, that's going to, it depends, where you're at, but that's going to take a couple of years. Like right now I'm working on a deal out of Hampton Cove. They just built apartments, and right across the street, this guy, his name's Charlie. I don't want to give too much information on his name, but he's owned this for probably 4 or 5 years, the land itself. 2 vacant lands, waiting for someone to build something across the street. So not even him. He's waiting on someone else. Now, I met with him probably this time last year. We looked at his space. We looked at what they were doing. They were just building the apartments. Now they're built. They're there. And then we have just got to like the planning and architect. I can't speak right now. Phase. So
yeah,
and that's probably going to take maybe another year or so. And that's a smaller one. Okay. So sometimes, for example, Trash Pandas. I was talking with this guy named Emo Fifuri. I can never say his last name, but he was one of the first guys there at Trash Pandas. He started working on Trash Pandas in 2015, 2016, and he was told he was an idiot and not going to do anything. And he raised $16 million for it, but that Trash Pandas really didn't get going to 2020.
Yeah.
So again, that's most of these things that you see, the Hayes Farms, sometimes Constellation. Scott had a lot of run-ins and backups, and took him a while to kind of get going. Those apartments, for example, he'll even tell you if you ask him, it took him, a couple of years to get going. So it really just depends what you're building, where, but it's never going to be, whenever someone comes to me like, hey, I want to lease a space by next week.
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to happen.
Hey, let's, this is a good segue to Constellation.
All right.
So check it out. Here's the YouTube clip where now you're not producing it, but you're going to get interviewed in it as the president of Nowcom.
All right.
So here, I'll enlarge this. Push a button, and here we go.
And there's Scott. Good guy.
Hopefully it might buffer here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's gonna skip forward a little bit.
Go on this site.
Mixed-use developments are a driving force to get more people to Huntsville. Mid-City and Stovehouse, two other locations capitalizing on multi-purpose spaces. The president of North Alabama Commercial Real Estate says it's something that's going to push growth in the Rocket City.
Between 25 and 29 people a day have been moving to Huntsville.
And Gonzalez Tablada says those people want to live somewhere that offers them a lot.
That live, work, play is really taking off.
According to data from CoStar, industrial rent growth has gone up 12% within the last year.
I said this.
Retail and multifamily rent has also grown nearly 6%. The Constellation developments dipping into each of those areas. But a big picture for a small city takes time.
You can have a vision and you can have an idea, but executing on that vision and idea can take far longer than you think.
There you go.
There you go.
You just said the same thing.
So Scott, it's kind of funny. At our September meeting we had at the Standards downtown, Scott was there. He's like, "Yeah, we're talking," and I let people talk to whatever guest I have there. Usually, I have like 3 or 4 people talking, and Scott stands up. He's like, "Yeah, so I heard the news called you president of North Alabama Real Estate. So apparently, you're my boss now." So if Scott's listening, I guess not your boss. So I'm not just kidding.
But my question is, they only took a couple sound bites there. How long was that interview?
Like 30 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
And they took 5 words.
Yeah, it's news though. It's
I know. Well, that's always I was telling a few people when I started my podcast, right? Like the Matt Crochels of the world from Way 31, or
yeah.
well, I don't know, anybody who's on TV. Like, hey, this is your chance to be unleashed, right? And there's going to be no my decision later editorially to be like, oh, I'm going to cut this out and cut that out, right? It's unfiltered.
I know, and what's funny too is I have nothing to do with Constellation, nor have ever made a decision on Constellation.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and it makes it seem like I'm Scott's boss talking about the Constellation. She had just called me about real estate in general, and then she didn't have access to Scott. So I sent her information to Scott. So I guess she felt bad and wanted to put me in
Gotcha.
the back.
So then I may have missed it in talking about NowCom as the president of that association. So describe that a little bit. Other than it's opportunity to do some networking. You're going to hold some events where people come in and do a presentation, and people are going to learn. But what are some other things that benefits to joining something like a NowCom than just kind of that professional development side?
That's a good question. I would say overall, so my vision for NowCom is really to connect everybody in the real estate business, especially if you want to be on the commercial side, with the lenders and all that. But really for the agents themselves, it's for the people like me. It's for it's definitely for, people who are experienced and been in, to say real quick, if you're an experienced realtor, you've been a broker or whatever for a while on commercial side, love to have you, want you to join. And there's huge value in having those people there, the Scotts, the owners of Huntsville. Last time, my September meeting, I had Hayes Farms come out and give us a whole update on what they're doing. So there really is huge value for anyone who just wants information to know what's going on in the here and now, right? So if you want to know what's going on with the Orion, if you want to know what's going on with Town Madison, the Trash Pandas, come to my next meeting and you can hear about it. But for the kids, the younger people like me, the 20-year-olds, the 24-year-olds, the people from Alabama, the Acre, for the kids, for the people in general, the core champions who we're raising scholarships for, it's about those people too. It's about people who feel like they're coming into commercial real estate and they're not working for NAI, or maybe they are working for NAI, but they feel like they're not getting enough attention. Eventually my goal is, and I'm trying to build it up, it's my first year, is to make sure that they can either get additional money so they can go sign up for their courses, they can do their extracurricular activities, but just show up to these meetings and I'll introduce you, and I have, to the Scott McLean, who's Harvard graduated and done so many great things. Because connecting those two people, connecting someone who's 23 or 30, but still fresh in the business, with a Scott, a Doug, a Charlie, a Max Grolier, who does, started Mid-City essentially. There's huge value in that. For me, it kind of gave me the confidence, for example, to kind of back it up. I know it's a long-winded answer, but it gave me the confidence knowing that I had the Doug, the Charlie, the Marks to train me, to call, say, hey, I'm messing this up real bad. Can you help me out? And so I think through Nowcom, we're able to connect everybody. And so for the people, and I hope that this message is getting across, and eventually it will, but for the young brokers who are in commercial real estate who need assistance, we'd love to help you. And I have, I've connected people, helped people get jobs, help people get jobs at NAI. We're raising $5,000 for hopefully someone who will need it here in Huntsville who wants to get their license and things like that. So to me, it's more than just about just collecting money and making the nonprofit big and, getting cool speakers and advancing my own career. Really, it's just more about helping as many people as I can feel connected. And I want to connect, and I have some big plans going on, but I want to connect the whole state of Alabama. I want the brokers in Florence, the brokers in Muscle Shoals, the brokers in Tuscaloosa, the Fort Paynes, the cities that don't have as much support as we do here, to feel like, hey, you can call me up, you can call up Nowcom, you can call up a senior broker or an owner here in town, and we'll help you.
Yeah.
And not because I want anything from you, but just because I just want to help you.
It's awesome. It's like just the way we started the podcast. It's kind of putting your money where your mouth is, where we talked about that, and you mentioned how great Huntsville is, and people seemingly want to help each other. Not just lip service, right? Through Nowcom is a great example of that.
Yeah,
we want to help you out because there's enough pie to go around, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's what's more satisfying for someone, like Doug always tells me, my grandfather too, like they'd much rather now at this point in their life see someone who they helped be successful. And it's true. I would love for me to look back in 20 years and Nowcom's rolling, and there's people who maybe don't have the money to enter into commercial real estate because it is expensive to get in.
Yeah.
Luckily my parents let me live with them the first 2 years when I moved back. But it's
sure.
Yeah, I guess it is full circle, and there's still a lot more to be done. There's more that I want to do that we will get done. But yeah, I guess that's my what Nowcom's about.
You ready to play the quick six?
Yeah, I am.
We're gonna do the quick six today.
All right. I guess we should mention though that
please.
Troy will be emceeing our event November 4th.
Oh, am I booked?
Yeah, you're booked. You're on the website. I'm gonna send it to you. But
awesome.
Yeah, so you'll be talking to people that will be there. Dale Strawn, the congressman.
Yeah.
We'll have Chad Emerson from the soccer team. There, Ryan people. So.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna comment. I mean, for any viewers who and believe, I think I don't know who my hardcore viewers are, and I appreciate that. But regardless, the last several episodes we've had speak to exactly what you were talking about, and I hope people will watch this. It's about North Alabama. I want to be all of Alabama.
Yeah.
But right now, let's say, okay, of the 10 counties in North Alabama, we had the Singing River Trail, which is what you were just talking about, from Bridgeport all the way to the Shoals, right? That's a literal trail that's going to connect. That talk about economic development, right? It's going to be awesome. And I tell people all the time who ride their bikes on some of these greenways, and they're like soon you're going to have access to over 200 miles of trail, from this greenway, and they're like, really? Yeah, it's going to be awesome. But we've had a lot of guests on when it comes to trying to build that region, right? And hopefully the Fort Paynes and others know that, hey, we're thinking regionally here, right? I know I'm new, and I'm trying to help champion that, right? As I talk to more and more people that are really buying into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we're gonna do the quick six.
All right, let's do it.
This is the part where I actually have to look at my notes as I jot things down. So, one thing I'm gonna ask one question here that's at the right screen. No, there we go. That is related to chess.
Oh,
and we didn't talk about your chess. I'm not a chess guy.
I like chess. Yeah,
but I know you said you're an avid chess player.
But
I need to provide that as a little bit of context.
All
right. So going back to your running days, do you still run, by the way? Still get out and jog and hit the pavement?
Not as much as I need to, no.
But okay, when you were racing,
yeah,
what's on the playlist? If you're able to listen to music, I know sometimes when there's races you're not allowed to have it, but for races where you are, actually, let me ask a two-part question. What's the first song when you take off you want to be listening to, and then ultimately what's on your playlist?
Ironically, Eye of the Tiger, I would always think about when I was running. I don't know why. Mainly because there's this movie, Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell, and he just goes ballistic, and he's listening. I don't know. So yeah, Eye of the Tiger.
Eye of the Tiger?
Yeah.
And then what other what's like the genre beyond just that music?
I'm weird, so when I'm running, I typically just like to listen to what I like to listen to, not like some people just go straight rap or something like that.
Yeah.
Man in the Mirror, Michael Jackson's always a good one. And then, a little bit Tupac and Biggie as well. So
Okay.
it's kind of all over the place, I guess.
All right. Do you have any superstitions when it came to sports? You played soccer, you have running. I know baseball is probably the most superstitious sports, but is there anything that you do?
The only thing I did, cross country, days of the race, I wouldn't wear socks. So I ran without socks.
No socks.
Yeah.
And you practiced without socks too?
No, practice with socks.
Wow.
It was just a game day, and I had my own special race shoes for when I was racing.
You felt lighter without the socks?
Yeah.
Okay. If you had front row seats to a concert, and I'll even caveat that because sometimes I think I'd rather be at the older I get, I'd probably rather be in a box or a suite. But which band? So assuming you get the best suite in the building, or you get front row seat, what band do you want to see playing on stage?
Oh, that's a good one. I've already seen Dave, so not Dave Matthews. Ironically, I'm a big. It's kind of a smaller. It's called Dispatch.
Dispatch.
Yeah.
I'll have to look them up.
Yeah.
Not familiar with Dispatch.
Yeah, they're an older band, but
Is that like punk?
no, it's indie. It's
Indie?
Look up The General by Dispatch. It's a pretty good song.
Okay.
That or honestly, John Mayer would be great, and I wish Michael Jackson could come back.
Yeah.
I'd love to see him.
So if Huntsville were to get like a semi-pro or professional kickball team, you're going to choose the colors for the team and the name. What would you name this kickball team? And let's say you're the president of this team.
Well, I'd be the first round pick as well.
And you'd be the first round pick, right? You're a player coach.
I'm the player coach.
And-
So say that again.
So you get to name the team,
Okay.
and then also choose its colors.
Okay. So colors would be most likely I do red and black,
Okay.
or
Like Georgia colors.
more like Bama or Miami Heat colors.
Okay, Miami. Let's go with Miami.
Miami Heat, or like the Vice City. I would probably make them the Huntsville. I don't know.
It's a tough one.
The Huntsville Kickouts. I don't know.
It could probably take people months, if not years. To
I
come up with
know.
the name, right?
That's a good one. Kickball.
Think about that as a homework assignment.
Yeah, our kickball team name is Anything's Possible. So
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Yeah. When in their first year, they would bring a bottle of Henny.
Okay.
I wasn't there, and they would like drink it, but then they all realized it was disgusting, so they stopped doing that.
All right. Favorite holiday.
Favorite holiday: Christmas or Noche Buena for
Noche
Hispanics.
Buena.
Yeah. This is the day before Christmas.
And best finish you ever had in chess. Walk me through, like, this is not necessarily a quick answer, but do you have any like prolific victory?
One, just beating my dad. He used to always. I had never as good at chess until I watched the Queen's Gambit. But my best win at chess, I would say, I lost my queen like early, and they didn't. And typically, I used to just quit out. I kind of waited, ended up coming back, and like I let him eat up all my pieces, and somehow I literally checkmated him with a pawn and I think like something else, and because I was just cornering him, and I got lucky that he didn't. There was one move he could have done to beat me, but he didn't. So yeah, I was pretty proud.
Did he
that.
see it coming?
It was online, so I don't know.
Okay.
Probably not. You can chat in there, and he
Yeah.
didn't send a very nice message after. So.
Good for you for beating him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so I asked the favorite holiday, but now that this is our first fall as a family,
Okay.
in Alabama, right? But what is your favorite season or time of the year as it relates to Huntsville?
As it relates to Huntsville, it's kind of hard. I would say maybe fall.
Fall?
Yeah, that or spring. I like warmer weather. I'm not a big cold person, but I do kind of like it. What is cool about Huntsville is it doesn't get too cold, but you still get the leaves that feel like here change really, really cool. Like it's really cool the way they do it. So
Well, in this time of year, we're getting those really crisp nights. It's getting colder, but then it will warm up during the day.
yeah, exactly.
We actually lit a fire the other night in our backyard, like fireplace.
You have a little fire pit or something
Yeah.
back there. Nice.
And then now it's like, but during the day, you're wearing shorts,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's kind of nice. Yeah. Like even today, I just put this on so I could wear it for this podcast, but I was definitely just wearing a t-shirt most of the day.
That was a quick 6.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for playing.
Thank you.
Eric, this has been awesome, man.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't really ever mention how we met. It was basically through an Alcom event, right? You kind of invited me to.
Yeah.
And I think admittedly, I get like, I don't know, 10 emails a day on LinkedIn from people. And they'll be like, hey, I see you're an executive director or something. And then, it's like a spam thing, right? And I didn't necessarily think you were spamming me, but sometimes in the course, like let's say your message comes over where you're kind of reaching out on one of those days where I get a lot of spam.
Of course. Yeah.
And you're just like, who's
Who is this?
But then I wanted to go to the event you were hosting. I think it was back in
This was
like July or August, maybe.
something like that. Yeah, it was probably July.
And I wasn't able to go. But then we met,
Yep.
downtown and ate and talked a little bit. And, you certainly got me excited in what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And, sharing some ideas and, look forward to working with you going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And we look forward to, having you MC our event November 4th. But yeah, definitely it was, I kept seeing you on LinkedIn and just, I think maybe Facebook too, your podcast showing up. I was like, I got to meet this guy. And then I saw Joe and I really want to talk to Joe as well. But yeah, no, I'm glad that we connected and glad that we did this. So
Yeah, I appreciate you coming, man.
yeah, of course.
Any final thoughts? Any shout outs?
I guess the only shout out would be to, NAI Chase Commercial. If you're looking for commercial real estate, definitely hit me up, or anyone at Chase Commercial, but also Nowcom, for anyone out there, lenders, brokers, banks, anyone in the commercial industry, and even in the residential industry, come check out Nowcom. We're having a joint meeting with HAR, which is the Huntsville area of Alabama's Realtor Association, on November 4th, and we're even having a happy hour November 3rd. So Shout out to HAR, to Stovehouse, to everybody, and shout out to you for having me.
Damn, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And also, just a reminder that today's episode was sponsored by Bold. That's Lauren Goins. I believe she was my episode 19.
Oh.
If anybody wants to go back and kind of hear the full story of Bold, and we had the black and white color set throughout most of the screens that, actually all of the screens that we looked at today.
Is that Bold Agency?
Bold Agency.
Yeah, they're actually at Stovehouse. They're
just down the street from there.
Yeah, they're off Governors. So Danny Yancey. I actually lease out that building too.
Okay.
So It's kind of funny. We just put them in there a
Yeah.
couple months ago or a year ago at this point. Yeah.
So we appreciate, their friendship and sponsorship. All right, Eric. All the best, man. We'll see you around.
Thank you.
See you, bud.